Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. No matter what time you're watching, welcome. And leave a comment telling me what town you're watching from. And listen, if this story popped up for you, it's because it deserves to be heard. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more like it. The earth was as cracked as my heart. It had been almost 4 months since the clouds had been anything more than empty promises in the sky over Harmony Creek, here in Oklahoma. The corn was drying on the stalk, the yellowed leaves looked like parched tongues begging for water. I walked between the rows of the crop, feeling the hot sand through the worn soles of my boots. Sweat ran down my neck, sticking my plaid shirt to my skinny body, which seemed to be withering along with the crop. 52 years old, a widower for 2, and still waiting for life to make sense again. Sarah always said I had hands that could heal the earth. "John, you make life bloom where everyone else only sees dust," she'd say, holding my calloused fist between her small, soft hands. Now, looking at this suffering field, I wondered if she hadn't been completely wrong. Maybe all I knew how to do was dry things up. Maybe that was my fate, to be a man who kills what he touches. The heat was enough to split rocks, the kind that makes you sweat before the sun even rises. The air shimmered above the red dirt, creating mirages that played tricks on tired eyes. In the distance, the hills looked like waves frozen in time, covered in dry scrub that crackled with the slightest breeze. Even the buzzards had given up on flying. They just perched on dead trees, waiting for something to have the decency to die soon, so they could eat. I stopped under the meager shade of a pecan tree. The dry leaves made a sad sound when the wind blew, like ghostly whispers. I took off my worn straw hat, my inheritance from my dad, and wiped my forehead with a damp cloth. The silence was heavy, oppressive. No crickets, no birds, not even the buzz of an insect. Only the rustling of dry leaves and the distant echo of my own breathing. It had been like this every day for 2 years. Wake up when the rooster crowed. If there were any roosters left alive around here, take care of the few animals that were left, look at the sky waiting for rain that never came, go back home with the same emptiness in my chest as a dry well. Routine had become a prison without bars, where I was both the prisoner and the jailer. Bessie, my milk cow, watched me from afar with those big, melancholy eyes. She felt it too. Animals always feel it when we're lost, when hope disappears, and all that's left is the habit of going on living. I went to the trough and filled it with fresh water from the well, one of the few that hadn't dried up in the area. At least I could still give them that, clean water, the right amount of feed, a scratch on their furry nose. "Well, Bessie, at least you don't complain about my company," I said, scratching behind her ear, feeling the warmth of her big, patient body. She swished her tail, chased away the persistent flies, and kept chewing slowly. She had a patience I envied, a serene acceptance of what life offered, without complaining, without questioning why things were the way they were. The house was about 300 yards from the field, a simple construction made of painted white brick with a porch in the front and a red clay tile roof that heated up like a furnace in the summer. Sarah had painted the window frames blue because she said it brought good luck and warded off the evil eye. Now, the paint was peeling, and I didn't have the heart to repaint it. It was like erasing the last traces of her, like admitting that she really was gone forever. Inside, everything remained exactly as it was the day she died. The solid wood table with 4 chairs, only one of which was of any use now. The floral fabric couch she chose at a furniture store in Tulsa after saving for months. The aluminum pots hanging on the kitchen wall, organized by size the way she liked. The hand-embroidered dish towels with small, delicate flowers. I moved things as little as possible. It was like living in a museum of my own life, where every object was a relic of better times. At night, I sat on the porch with a glass of ice water and listened to the heavy silence of loneliness. Sometimes a car passed on the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of red dust that took a while to settle. Sometimes a lost dog barked in the distance. Sometimes a truck honked far away on the interstate. But most of the time, it was just me and the weight of my thoughts, circling like a buzzard over carrion. Sarah died of pancreatic cancer. 2 years of fighting, 2 years of watching her wither away in front of me without me being able to do anything at all. I took her to doctors in Oklahoma City, to faith healers in Stillwater, to Cherokee medicine women in Tahlequah. I spent all our savings, sold 2 head of cattle, borrowed money from the bank. Nothing worked. In the end, she weighed less than a sack of corn. She held my hand with a strength that didn't match her fragile body and said with a voice that seemed to come from far away, "Don't let life stop because of me, John. Promise me you'll keep living for real." I promised. I swore on her memory, on the cross at the cemetery where she was buried, on everything that was sacred. But promising is easy when the person we love is dying in front of us. Keeping that promise is what hurts, what cuts, what bleeds every day. Now, sitting in the same rocking chair where she used to crochet on hot afternoons, I understood that I had broken that promise every day since the funeral. Life hadn't stopped. It had just become empty, like the house, too big for one man. Like my hollow chest, like the future, which had no color or shape. The clock in the living room struck 9 o'clock with that metallic sound that echoed through the silent house. It was time to sleep, although sleep was slow to come. I lay down on the double bed, always on the same side, my side, leaving her side untouched as if she were coming back at any moment. I lay staring at the wooden ceiling, counting the beams, looking for shapes in the damp stains. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but the emptiness was bigger than the exhaustion. It was an emptiness that took up space, that had weight, that pulled me down as if it were quicksand. Tomorrow would be the same as today, and the day after tomorrow too. An endless sequence of identical days until the earth or I gave up first. For now, it was a tie. I kept breathing. The earth remained dry. Neither of us knew how to live right anymore. The last thing I heard before falling asleep was the wind shaking the dry leaves in the backyard. It sounded like whispered secrets. It sounded like a promise of change. It sounded like something different was coming, floating in the warm night air, like the perfume of a flower that hadn't yet bloomed. But that I would only discover the next day, and when I did discover it, my whole life would turn upside down, like a field after a storm. The rooster crowed before sunrise, as it always had since I was a boy on this farm. I woke up with a sore body and a dry mouth from sleeping little and dreaming too much. Another night of restless sleep, another day that began like the others. Or at least, that's what I thought as I rubbed my eyes and felt my bones complaining about the old bed. I got up slowly, feeling each of my 52 years weighing differently when you carry sadness with you on your back. I went to the kitchen, lit the gas stove, one of the few luxuries Sarah had managed to buy, and put water on to boil. Breakfast was always the same. Bitter black coffee, stale bread, sometimes a piece of cheese when there was any left from the week. Sarah's coffee was still kept in the same glass jar with a metal lid. I bought the same kind, ground it the same way, strained it in the same cloth filter. But it was never the same as hers. Maybe because it lacked the love she put into everything she did. Maybe because the taste of longing makes everything bitter. Outside, the day promised to be scorching again. The thermometer hanging on the porch already read 82 degrees, and the sun had barely appeared behind the hills. Bessie mooed softly in the pen, asking for her morning feed. The few stalks of cassava that had survived the drought swayed in the warm wind that came from the prairie, seeming to wave goodbye to life. After taking care of the animals, giving Bessie her feed, throwing corn to the few chicks that remained, checking if there was enough water in the troughs, and taking a look at the field that continued to beg the empty sky for help, I decided to go to Willow Creek. I needed to buy tick medicine for the cows and take the opportunity to sell the last tomatoes that had grown well in the small garden near the house. It wasn't much, about 4 pounds of slightly withered tomatoes, but it was enough to buy the basics: rice, beans, sugar, cooking oil, laundry detergent. The rural retirement pension barely covered the essentials, and there were still 2 weeks until the next payment. I saddled Thunder, my bay horse, who had been with me for almost 10 years. He was just like me, a bit stubborn, used to loneliness, but loyal to the end. He had barbed wire scars on his legs, some white spots on his brown coat, and a somewhat melancholy way of looking that matched my state of mind. I put the tomatoes in a cloth bag that Sarah had sewn, tied it to the saddle, and we set off along the dirt road that connected my property to the town. The road was about 5 miles of potholes, dust, and loose stones. On each side, barbed wire fences marked properties that were also suffering from the drought. Burnt pasture, skinny cattle looking for shade under leafless trees, empty ponds looking like open wounds on the land. It was pure desolation, as if God had forgotten that there was life in that part of the world. Willow Creek was no more than a handful of houses scattered around a small square, with a simple-looking church, a small market, a pharmacy, and a bar that functioned more as a meeting point for the men of the region. It was the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where news becomes a topic for weeks, and where secrets last less than a politician's promise. I sold the tomatoes to Mr. Johnson, the owner of the market. He always bought my produce, even when it wasn't at its best. He had known Sarah since she was a girl. They had been schoolmates, and I think he bought more out of consideration and friendship than out of real need. "Hey, John, how are things on the farm?" he asked, weighing the tomatoes on an old scale that must have been older than me and that made a metallic noise with every movement. "Same as always, Mr. Johnson. This drought is hitting everyone equally hard." "That's the truth. But they say it's going to rain at the end of the month. Billy at the gas station heard it on the radio on the Oklahoma Farm Report." I nodded, but didn't believe it. I had heard that promise a dozen times in the last few months. The sky seemed to have completely forgotten the way to this region of Oklahoma. I bought the medicine at Mrs. Evans' pharmacy, an old woman of about 70 who knew a remedy for everything, from stomachache to heartache. She always asked if I was taking good care of my health, if I was eating right, if I wasn't drinking too much to ward off the loneliness. It was a mother's affection that I no longer had, family attention that had remained only in memory. "John, you're too thin. Are you eating right?" "I am, Mrs. Evans. It's just that working the farm doesn't let us gain weight." She looked at me suspiciously, with those looks that cut through lies and go straight to the truth, but didn't insist. She gave me the medicine and even put a bottle of vitamin C in the bag. "It's on the house, so you can get stronger. And don't forget to eat meat, okay? Only vegetables don't sustain a working man." I thanked her and left. It was noon when I left Willow Creek. The sun was at its peak, melting the asphalt on the main street and making the air shimmer like water. Thunder snorted, bothered by the heat that seemed to come out of the ground like steam. I decided to go back by the longest way, which passed through a dirt road shaded by elms and cottonwood trees. It was a few miles longer, but it was worth it for the shade and relative coolness. The alternative road cut through a more preserved region where there were still large trees and generous shade. The sound of Thunder's hooves on the dirt road had a hypnotic rhythm, and for the first time in a long time, I felt almost at peace. It was good to be away from home, away from the memories, away from the emptiness that awaited me on my return. It was when I reached a sharp curve that led to a steep descent that I saw something strange. On the left side of the road, half hidden among the trees, there was what appeared to be a person sitting under a tree. I pulled the reins and stopped Thunder, shading my eyes with my hand to see better. It was a woman, young, sitting on the ground with her back against the trunk of a big cottonwood tree, her legs stretched out, her head kind of drooping to the side, as if she had fainted from exhaustion. She was wearing a faded blue dress, dirty with dirt and torn in some places, and she was barefoot. Her long black hair stuck to her sweaty face, partially covering her features. I got off the horse slowly, carefully. It wasn't common to find people alone on that road, especially a woman, and especially in that deplorable state. It could be dangerous. Sometimes bandits used women as bait to rob travelers. But something about her told me it wasn't a trap. It was real despair. "Ma'am," I called, still about 10 feet away. "Are you all right?" She raised her head with effort as if it weighed tons. Her eyes were deep, dark, her cheeks dry and sunburned, her lips chapped with thirst. She tried to say something, but only a weak moan came out, almost a whisper of wind. I got closer, stepping slowly on the dry leaves. She must have been in her early 20s. She was pretty despite her deplorable state, but what caught my attention the most were her eyes. It wasn't just exhaustion or thirst, it was fear. A deep, visceral fear, the kind that marks the soul and never leaves. "Water." "Oh," she managed to whisper, her voice as rough as sandpaper. I ran to Thunder and got my water gourd. I came back and knelt beside her, feeling the smell of sweat, dust, and despair that came from her frail body. I held her head carefully. It was as light as a bird's, and brought the water to her chapped lips. She drank desperately, as if she hadn't drunk water for days. Some drops ran down her chin, making clean streaks on her dirty skin. "Slow down, ma'am." "Slow down," I said, trying to sound as calm as possible. When she stopped drinking, she looked me in the eyes for the first time, and in that look, there was such deep, such desperate gratitude that it squeezed my chest like a punch. "Thank you," she said, her voice still weak, but clearer now. "How did you get here? Where is your family?" She lowered her eyes and shook her head slowly. It wasn't that she didn't want to answer. It was that she didn't know how to answer, how to explain a situation that maybe even she didn't understand right. I got lost," she said, but I realized that wasn't quite it. There was something more, something she couldn't or wouldn't say. I looked around, trying to understand. There was no house, no side road, no trail. Nothing to explain how a barefoot girl had ended up there. The cottonwood tree was about 50 yards from the road, half hidden by bushes and tall grass. It was as if she had hidden on purpose, as if she were running from something. "How long have you been here?" "I don't know. Since last night, I think. Or the night before. I don't remember exactly. Last night." That meant she had spent at least 20 hours under that merciless sun, without water, without food, without protection. It was a miracle she was alive. It was a miracle she hadn't fainted from sunstroke. I looked at her more closely, trying to understand what had happened. The dress was torn in several places, with dark stains that could have been dried blood. Her arms had deep scratches, as if she had run through dense brush. Her feet were hurt, with small cuts and thorns stuck in the soles. Her nails were broken, dirty with dirt, as if she had dug or crawled. "You're hurt. You need medical help." She tried to get up on her own, supporting her hands on the rough trunk of the cottonwood tree, but her legs wouldn't obey. She trembled like a leaf in the wind and almost fell to the side. Instinctively, I grabbed her arm to support her. She was too light, too thin, as if she hadn't eaten right for a long time, as if life had sucked all the substance out of her body. "Mum, you can't stay here. The sun's going to get even hotter soon. Let me take you to my house. There you can clean up, eat something, rest, and then we'll see what to do." She looked at me with fear again. Not of me specifically, but as if any help could be a trap, as if kindness was too suspicious to be true. "I'm not going to hurt you," I said, trying to sound as calm and trustworthy as possible. "My name is John. I have a farm nearby. My wife..." I started but stopped. I was going to say that Sarah would take good care of her, but Sarah wasn't there anymore. "You'll be safe with me, I promise." She hesitated, looking at the empty road, then at me. then at the ground of dry leaves. When she raised her eyes again, there was a heavy decision there, as if she had chosen between two evils and opted for the lesser one. "Eleanor," she said softly, almost whispering. "My name is Elena." "Elena. Pretty name," I said, smiling to try to put her at ease. "Nice to meet you, Elena. Come on, I'll help you get on Thunder." She was so light that I managed to lift her almost effortlessly, as if she were a child. I put her on the saddle in front of me and held her tight so she wouldn't fall. She leaned against my chest carefully, and I felt her heart beating too fast, like a frightened bird about to fly. During the way back to the farm, she didn't say anything else. She just stayed there, breathing slowly, sometimes trembling even in the scorching heat. I didn't ask anything else either. There would be time for conversation later. Now it was time to care, to save, to give the basics that any human being deserves: water, food, shelter, safety. When we arrived home, the sun was already beginning to set behind the hills, painting the sky orange and red. The cicadas were singing loudly in the backyard, announcing the end of the hot afternoon. I stopped Thunder near the porch and helped Elena down. She could barely stand, supporting the weight of her body sometimes on one leg, sometimes on the other. "Come on, I'll take you to the bathroom. You need to clean up and change clothes." She nodded, following behind me with small, insecure steps. Inside the house, I got clean towels, soap, a basin of warm water that I heated on the stove. I went to the bedroom closet, the closet that still held Sarah's clothes, and got a simple floral dress that she used to wear to work in the garden. I couldn't avoid the pang in my chest. It was the first time I had touched her clothes since the funeral. "Here," I said, handing everything to Elena at the bathroom door. "If you need anything, just call. I'll be here in the living room." She took the things with trembling hands and looked at me again with that deep gratitude that made me uncomfortable. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping me?" The question caught me by surprise. Why was I doing that anyway? I didn't know the girl. I didn't know where she came from. I didn't know if she was telling the truth about being lost. But looking at her, at that young face marked by suffering, I knew the answer right away. Because it's the right thing to do. And because, well, it's been a while since this house has had a visitor. It's good to have someone here. She smiled for the first time since I met her, a small, tired but true smile, like sunshine after a storm. "Thank you, John, from the bottom of my heart." Diles. While she was washing up, and from the sound of the water, she was washing carefully, slowly, as if each drop were precious. I went to the kitchen to prepare something for her to eat. I heated up some chicken soup that I'd made the day before, cut a generous piece of homemade bread, served it on a plate with care. It was strange to cook for someone again, strange and good. It had been so long since I only cooked for myself that I had almost forgotten what it was like to prepare food, thinking about pleasing someone else. When Elena came out of the bathroom, she looked like a completely different person. Sarah's dress was a little big on her, but she was clean, her wet hair pulled back, her skin without the layer of dirt and sweat. Without all that dirt on her face, you could see that she was really very pretty. But her eyes remained filled with that deep fear, that sadness that seemed to come from far away. "Sit here," I said, pointing to the chair at the table. "Eat slowly. Your stomach must be empty for too long." She ate in silence, each spoonful as if it were the most important of her life. She chewed slowly, savoring it, closing her eyes sometimes, as if she wanted to record that moment in her memory. I stayed there, just watching, feeling a strange sensation in my chest. It was as if the house had started breathing again after being stopped for so long, as if it had returned to having a purpose. When she finished eating, she leaned back in the chair and sighed deeply. For the first time since I met her, she seemed relaxed. "John, I need to tell you something," she said, completely changing the tone of her voice. "You can talk. There's time." "I didn't get lost on the road," she said, looking directly into my eyes. "I ran away. And at that moment, sitting in my own kitchen, looking at that girl who had arrived almost dead in my life, I knew that everything was going to get much more complicated than I imagined. Her words hung in the air like cigarette smoke. I ran away. The chicken soup in the pot was still steaming softly. The cicadas were still singing outside. But inside the kitchen there was a heavy, loaded silence, waiting for the truth that Elena was about to tell. Elena lowered her eyes to the empty plate, her small hands trembling a little as she held the spoon, as if it were an anchor that prevented her from sinking. I didn't pressure her, didn't ask questions, didn't show any hurry. I had already learned in life, especially taking care of sick Sarah, that certain stories come out when they are ripe, when the person is ready, not when we want to hear them. "You don't need to tell me anything now," I said, getting up to serve a little more broth in her bowl. "First you rest, recover properly. Then if you want, we'll talk." She shook her head with determination. "No, I need to tell you yes. You helped me without knowing my story, without knowing if I deserved help. You deserve to know who you're sharing your house with, what kind of problem you might be bringing into your life." I got up from the chair and lit the gas lamp that hung from the ceiling. It was getting dark outside, and the shadows in the kitchen were beginning to create strange shapes on the whitewashed walls. Elena pulled the crochet shawl that I had given her, also from Sarah, over her thin shoulders and took a deep breath as if preparing to dive into icy water. "I lived in Tulsa with my stepfather," she began, looking at the yellowish flame of the lamp. "My mother died when I was 16 years old. Liver cancer that the doctors discovered too late. It happened fast. In 6 months, she went from a healthy woman to a shadow of what she was. And then she died. I knew that pain well. The same one that had visited me 2 years ago, that still lived in my chest like a thorn stuck in it. I'm sorry, Eleanor. Losing a mother early is one of the worst things that can happen to a person. Rodrigo, my stepfather, stayed with me because I had nowhere else to go. At least that's what he said. That he was doing me a huge favor, giving me a roof and food when he could very well send me away. That I should be grateful, that I should reciprocate his kindness somehow. She stopped, her fingers squeezing the shawl tightly. I could already imagine where that story was going, and I felt the anger begin to rise through my throat. But he was never a good person, John. My mother didn't see it, or pretended not to see it. I don't know. Maybe she needed a man in her life so much that she closed her eyes to the type of man he was. Elena raised her eyes to me, and there was a shame there that broke my heart. Shame of telling, shame of having lived that, shame of having survived when maybe it would be easier to have given up. He drank a lot, John. Every day from lunchtime until dawn. When he was drunk, he got different. He looked at me in a way that made me shiver all over. He said things that a girl shouldn't hear. He made comments about my body, about how I was becoming a woman. He never got to really touch me in the first years, but the looks, the dirty words, his ways, it was as if I were a piece of meat waiting for the right time to be devoured. I felt the anger rise even more, a hot anger that made me want to get out of there, get on Thunder, and go to Tulsa to settle the score with that bastard. I knew this type of man. Predators who take advantage of those who can't defend themselves, who use the needs of others as a weapon. And it got worse over time. Elena continued, her voice firmer now, as if telling it had given her strength. As I grew up, turning into a woman, he got bolder. He started coming into my room without knocking, appearing in the bathroom when I was taking a shower, bumping into me on purpose in the kitchen, always with an excuse, always saying it was unintentional. But I knew it wasn't. Elena stopped to drink a sip of water, her hand trembling slightly. I tried to talk to neighbors, to distant relatives of my mother, but no one believed me. Rodrigo was seen as a hard-working man who had stayed with his stepdaughter out of kindness. And I was just an orphan girl, kind of weird, who might be making up stories. Or at least that's how they looked at me. And you never tried to leave there? Where to, John? I had no money, no close relatives, nowhere to run. And he always reminded me of that. He said that if I left, I would starve on the street, that no good man would want a girl without family, without a dowry, without anything to offer, that the world out there was too dangerous for a girl like me. The lamp crackled, the flame danced, projecting shadows that seemed to move on the walls. Outside, an owl hooted in the distance, a melancholy sound that matched the sadness of the story that Eleanor was telling. And today was the last straw, she continued, taking a deep breath as if preparing to tell the most difficult part. Rodrigo came home in the afternoon, more drunk than usual. He had lost money gambling again. He blamed everything on me, said I brought bad luck, that I was a useless mouth to feed. He said it was time for me to give my place in the world, pay what I owed for the years he had supported me. Eleanor closed her eyes, as if she wanted to block the memory. He came at me, John. This time it wasn't just looking or dirty words. He really wanted to do that to me. He said I was a grown woman, that it was time to learn what a woman was for in a man's life, and that if I didn't do it willingly, he would teach me by force. I clenched my fists on the table so hard that my knuckles ached. If that bastard had been in front of me at that moment, I wouldn't answer for the consequences. I managed to push him when he tried to grab me. He was so drunk that he lost his balance and fell. It was my chance. I didn't take anything, John. No clothes, no money, no documents. I just ran like crazy. I ran through the back of the house, jumped the fence, ran through the dense woods without looking back. I didn't stop until I reached the main road. And how did you get here from that area? I hitched a ride with a truck driver, an old man about 60 years old who seemed to be a good person. He had a photo of his family in the cabin. He spoke of his wife with affection. He gave me water, a sandwich, didn't ask inconvenient questions. He left me at a bus stop on the road, near that curve where you found me. He said that from there I could get a ride to anywhere in the country. Elena drank more water, wiped away a tear that had run down her cheek. But when other trucks arrived at the stop, the men looked at me in a way that scared me again. One of them got out and came to talk, asking questions that weren't of innocent curiosity. He wanted to know if I had family nearby, if anyone knew where I was. He spoke in a way that made me shiver all over. I ran again and hid among the trees. And you stayed there since yesterday. Since the night before last, I spent 2 whole days hidden, John. Afraid to go back to the road, afraid of the men who passed by, afraid of everything. I drank water from a puddle I found, ate some wild fruits that I recognized, but I was getting weaker and weaker, more and more desperate. Elena looked at me with those big, sad eyes. When you appeared and offered me water, I thought it was a dream, or that it was another man wanting to take advantage. But something in your way, in your voice, told me that I could trust you. And look, I don't regret it. And don't you have anyone else in the world? Distant relatives, school friends, anyone? Elena shook her head sadly. My mother was an only child, just like me. My father died in a work accident when I was a baby. I don't even remember his face. The few friends I had at school, well, after my mother died and I went to live with Rodrigo, he didn't like me leaving the house, having contact with other people. He said people would talk bad about me, that they would make up stories. He gradually isolated me until I really didn't have anyone anymore. The picture was becoming clearer and more infuriating. An orphan girl, alone in the world, held hostage by a predator who took advantage of her vulnerability to maintain total control over her life. And now she was there, in my kitchen, telling her story to a stranger because she literally had no one else in the world. Eleanor, I want you to understand something very important, I said, leaning forward in my chair. Nothing that happened to you was your fault. You were a child when your mother died, a girl with no option, no choice. That man took advantage of your situation. You are a victim, not guilty. Her eyes filled with tears. Sometimes I think I could have done something different, that I could have been smarter, more courageous. No, I interrupted firmly. You did what you could with what you had. And today, when you had a real chance to run away, you were courageous. Yes, damn courageous. Running away with nothing, surviving alone in the woods, accepting help from a stranger. All this required a courage that many people don't have. Elena wiped away the tears with the back of her hand. And now, John, what do I do now? I can't go back there. I have nowhere to go. I have no ID. I have nothing. I looked at her, at that girl in her early 20s who had faced so much suffering, who had come into my life like an injured bird, and I felt a certainty growing in my chest. Now you stay here, for as long as you need. This house is big, there's plenty of space, and I've gotten so used to loneliness that I'm enjoying having company again. Elena looked at me with that deep gratitude that was already becoming familiar. But John, you don't even know me right. How can you be sure that I won't cause trouble? Because anyone who spends 2 days in the woods, hungry and thirsty, and still says thank you when they receive a glass of water is a good-hearted person. And because I hesitated, searching for the right words. Because when I found you on the road today, it was the first time in 2 years that I felt that life had any purpose again. It was raw truth. I hadn't realized it before, but that was exactly it. Taking care of sick Sarah had given me meaning. After she died, I kinda died too, functioning on autopilot. Today, taking care of Elena, preparing food for her, seeing her get better, it was as if a part of me that was dead had come back to life. So it's not just you who's being saved today, I continued. I think we both needed this meeting. You needed a safe place, and I needed a reason to keep living for real. Elena smiled for the 3rd time since I met her. A wider, truer smile that lit up her tired face. Thank you, John. Really, from the bottom of my heart, I promise I won't be a burden, that I'll help in whatever way I can, You don't need to promise anything, I interrupted. You just need to rest, recover, and let life show you the way, one thing at a time. I got up from the table and started collecting the dishes. Now come on, I'll show you where you're going to sleep. Tomorrow we'll talk more, make plans, see what needs to be done. I took her to the guest room. It was small but cozy, with a single bed covered by a patchwork quilt that Sarah had made years ago, an old but solid dresser, and a window that looked out onto the backyard, where some fruit trees still resisted the drought. It's not luxury, but it's comfortable and safe. It's perfect, John, she said, running her hand over the quilt with reverence. It's been so long since I slept in a real bed, in a place where I can close my eyes without fear. I got clean sheets from the closet in the hallway and helped her make the bed. Eleanor watched everything carefully, as if she wanted to keep every detail in her memory, as if she couldn't believe that it was real. John, can I ask you something kind of personal? Of course you can. The dress you gave me, the quilt on this bed, they were your wife's, right? I swallowed hard. I hadn't thought she would notice, but of course she would. Women always notice these things. They were, yes. I'm sorry if it's strange for you to use her things, but it was the only women's clothing I had in the house, and it's not strange, she interrupted, smoothing the fabric of the dress. It's caring, honoring. She must have been a very special woman for you to take care of her things with such love. She was the most special I've ever known in my life. Idod, what was she like, if it's not too hard for you to talk about? I sat on the edge of the bed, surprised at myself. It had been over a year since anyone had asked about Sarah, and I had thought it would be too painful to talk about her. But there, at that moment with Elena listening with genuine interest, I felt like I wanted to talk. Sarah was small in size, but huge in heart. She laughed at anything silly, sang while she cooked, took care of everyone who showed up around here. Even the injured animals that people brought for her to care for. She had infinite patience, a loving way of looking at the world, and she loved me in a way that I never thought I deserved. Did you have children? The question that always hurt, always squeezed my chest. No, Sarah couldn't have children. Problem with her uterus since she was young. It was one of her sadnesses, but we completed each other in other ways. We were happy, you know. Very happy. Elena was quiet for a moment, absorbing what I had told her. I'm sure she would be happy to know that her clothes are helping someone who needs them, and that you're not alone anymore. I think so, I agreed, feeling a strange warmth in my chest. Sarah always said that the house was meant to be shared, that loneliness was a waste of space and love. I got up from the bed and walked to the door. Well, I'll let you rest. If you need anything during the night, water, blanket, anything, just call me. My room is right next door. John? Yes? Thank you so much. For saving me, for welcoming me, for not judging me, for giving me back hope when I thought I'd lost it forever. There's nothing to thank, Elena. Sleep well. Tomorrow is a new day. I closed the door slowly and went to my bed, but sleep was slow to come. I lay there, looking at the wooden ceiling, thinking about her story. A girl in her early 20s who had gone through so much suffering, so much loneliness, so much fear. And now she was there, in the room next door, sleeping in a safe bed for the first time in years. Around 2 in the morning, I heard a noise coming from her room. It sounded like muffled crying, whispers of a nightmare. I got out of bed, went to her door, and listened carefully. Elena was crying softly, trying not to make noise, fighting against some bad dream. I knocked lightly on the door. Elena, are you all right in there? The crying stopped immediately. Yes, John, I'm sorry if I woke you up. You didn't wake me up. Can I come in? Yes. I opened the door slowly. She was sitting on the bed, hugging her knees, with her face wet with tears and her eyes wide in the dim light. Nightmare? She nodded. I dreamed that he had found me, that he was dragging me back home, and that you couldn't help me. I sat in the chair near the bed, trying to appear calm and protective. That's not going to happen, Elena. That man doesn't know where you are, and even if he did, he would have to go over me first. And I may not be young anymore, but I still know how to defend myself. I know. In my head, I know I'm safe. But my heart is still afraid, you know? It's like it has engraved on it the feeling of having nowhere to run. I understood perfectly. After Sarah died, I dreamed about her every night for months. I woke up thinking she was still there, and the reality of the loss hit me hard every morning. Trauma is like that. It takes a while to leave the body, even when the mind has understood that it's over. Do you want me to make some tea? Chamomile helps to calm the nerves and brings good sleep. I would, yes, if it's not too much trouble. No trouble at all. I'll be right back. I went to the kitchen, lit the stove, picked fresh chamomile in the garden that Sarah cared for in the backyard, and that I kept more out of stubbornness than out of knowledge. I made the tea very warm, with a little honey to sweeten it. When I returned to the room, Elena had stopped crying and was calmer. Here, I said, handing her the steaming mug. Sarah always made this tea when one of us couldn't sleep. It works better than medicine. She drank slowly, savoring the taste of the herb and honey. It's really good. It has a scent that brings peace. Eleanor, can I ask you something? You can. What do you want to do from now on? I mean, have you thought about any plans for the future? She looked at the mug in her hands thoughtfully. Honestly, I don't know, John. I've never had to plan anything on my own. Rodrigo controlled everything. Where I went, what I did, even who I talked to. Now it's like I was born again at 22 and I don't know how to live. Well then, let's find out together. You don't need to decide anything now. You don't need to hurry. You can stay here as long as you need to find yourself, to discover what you want from life. And if I never find out, and if I'm one of those people who don't have a talent for anything, who don't know how to do anything right, that's a lie that bastard put in your head, I said firmly. Everyone has something good inside them, some talent, some ability. You just haven't had a chance to discover it yet because you lived suffocated. But here, You will have time and freedom to know yourself for real." Her eyes sparkled again with that gratitude that was already becoming familiar. "You saved my life, John. For real. You not only took me off that road, you gave me back hope, the possibility of having a different future. We saved each other, Elena. I also needed a reason to wake up every day. You gave me that back." She finished the tea and lay down again, more relaxed. I turned off the small lamp that was on the dresser and headed for the door. "Sleep well, and if you have another nightmare, don't hesitate to call me." "John." "Yes? Thank you for not making me feel like a burden, for treating me like a person, not like a problem. That's how you treat people, Elena, the way you deserve to be treated." I went back to my room, and for the first time in 2 years, I managed to sleep through the night. I didn't dream about dead Sarah. I dreamed about her alive, smiling, giving me a kiss on the forehead and whispering, "You did the right thing, John. Keep taking care of her." When I woke up in the morning, with the rooster crowing and the sun coming in through the window, I felt something different in the air. It was as if the house had started breathing for real, as if it had returned to being a home instead of just a place to sleep. Outside, the crickets had sung their song all night long, and inside the house, 2 wounded souls were beginning, little by little, to heal together. The first days with Elena on the farm passed like leaves carried by the wind, fast, but leaving deep marks wherever they touched. She always woke up before me, and when I arrived in the kitchen, still half asleep, the coffee was already ready and steaming on the table. Not my bitter coffee of a lonely widower, but a coffee tempered with care, the way Sarah made it, with that taste that warms more than the belly, warms the heart. "Good morning, John," she always said with that small but true smile, like the sun rising after a cold night. "Good morning, Elena. Did you sleep well?" "Better with each passing night." And it was true that you could see it. The nightmares were diminishing. Her eyes were losing that constant fear that seemed to live in the depths of them. And she began to walk around the house as if she really belonged to that place. No longer as a visitor afraid of disturbing, but as someone who had found her corner in the world. On the 3rd day, I found her messing with the garden in the back, the one that Sarah cared for so lovingly, and that I had let die after her death out of pure inability to continue seeing life sprout when everything inside me was dead. Eleanor was kneeling in the red dirt, with her hands dirty up to her wrists, pulling out the weeds that had taken over everything, separating the good seeds from the bad with a patience that impressed me. "Can I take care of this?" she asked when she saw me standing in the kitchen door, watching with a mixture of surprise and emotion. "Of course you can, but there's a lot of work there. It's been 2 years since anyone touched this garden properly." "It's no problem, John. I like to plant. I like to mess with the dirt. My mother always said that the earth doesn't lie. If you take care of it with true love, it repays you in the same coin." That phrase hit me like a well-aimed punch to the stomach. It was exactly what Sarah said, with the same words, the same loving way of referring to the work on the land. For a moment, I had the strange feeling that Sarah had sent Elena to me, as if she had chosen her to continue taking care of what she could no longer take care of. Elena spent the whole morning working in the garden with a dedication that touched me deeply. She planted cherry tomatoes, curly lettuce, collard greens, parsley, chives. She watered everything with fresh water from the well, talking softly to the seedlings as if they were pets, as if each plant was a baby that needed love to grow strong. It was strange and beautiful at the same time to see that garden coming back to life after so long abandoned. In the afternoon, when the sun was too hot and even the lizards looked for shade, she came inside and helped in the house. She swept the rooms, washed dishes, organized the things that I left scattered, but always carefully, always asking if she could touch this or that, if she could move furniture, if she could wash clothes that had been hanging for days. She respected the space, respected the memories, respected the longing that still lived in every corner of that house. John, I found some photos in a kitchen drawer while I was organizing. Do you want me to put them somewhere else, or can I leave them where they were? They were photos of Sarah that I hadn't seen in a long time. Some that made me feel good, others that squeezed my chest like a vice. Sarah in the backyard, watering the sunflower plants that she planted every year. Sarah in the kitchen, smiling while making bread. Sarah on the porch, crocheting with that concentrated look she got when she was creating something beautiful. You can leave them there. It's good to see them from time to time, you know? Reminds me of the good times. Eleanor picked up a photo where Sarah was in the backyard, watering the flowers, with that wide smile of hers that lit up any room. She seemed to be a very enlightened person, one of those who brighten the place just by being present. She was exactly like that. She brightened everything she touched. Even the greyest days became colorful when she was around. Oh, and you miss her every day, right? It wasn't a question. It was a statement from someone who understands longing, who has also lost an important person. Every single day. But it's getting easier to live with this absence, you know? Before it was like there was a hole in my chest that hurt with every breath. Now it's more of a gentle longing, which hurts less. She looked at me with deep understanding. She knew exactly what I was talking about. She also missed her mother every day. Also carried the pain of having lost the most important person in her life too soon. In the first week, Eleanor was still too careful with me and with the house. She walked on tiptoe, spoke softly, as if she were afraid of breaking something precious or of waking up some ghost that lived in those walls. But little by little, she relaxed. She allowed herself to occupy real space. She became part of that place, instead of just a temporary visitor. She started cooking, and my God, how well she cooked. She made fluffy rice that melted in your mouth, beans seasoned just right, neither bland nor too salty, a cornbread stuffing with sausage that was pure sin, it was so good, simple, country food, but made with true love. It was so good to have someone to cook for again, someone to share meals without rushing, someone to talk to during dinner about how the day had been. Where did you learn to cook so well? From my mother. It was one of the few things that Rodrigo let us do together without interfering, cooking and taking care of the house. He said it was women's work and didn't meddle. Did your mother cook well too? Very well. She said that food made with love nourishes more than food made just to fill your belly. That we feel the difference in the taste, in the smell, even in the way the body receives the food. Another phrase that reminded me of Sarah. It was impressive how those two women, who had never met, had similar ways of seeing the world, of taking care of people, of transforming a house into a home. At the end of the first week, Elena had already created her own routine that fit perfectly into mine. She woke up early, made great coffee, took care of the garden until the sun got too hot, helped in the house during the afternoon, cooked with love. At night, we sat on the porch, she with a crochet project that she had found in a drawer, also from Sarah, and that she had learned to do on her own, I with my coffee and my thoughts that were now less bitter. John, can I ask you something kind of personal? You can ask as many as you want. You and Sarah, were you really happy? I mean, really? Everyone has problems, right? Every marriage has its difficulties. The question caught me by surprise. It had been so long since anyone had asked about my marriage, about how my life with Sarah had been. We were happy, yes, very happy. Of course, there were difficult days, silly arguments over nonsense, those things that every couple has. But we were true partners, you know? One completed the other. It's just, I've never seen a happy relationship up close. My mother and my father argued a lot before he died. Then she got with Rodrigo, and that was never real love. It was more, I don't know, fear of being alone, a need to have a man in the house. True love exists, Elena, It's rare, it's hard to find, but it exists, and when we find it, we know it right away. How do we know when it's real? I thought about her question for a while. How to explain something that is felt with the heart, but not seen with the eyes? I think it's when you look at the person and you can't imagine life without them. When their problems become your problems too. When their happiness becomes more important than your own happiness. When you want to care for them, protect them, make them smile every day. Elena was quiet for a long time, processing what I had said, perhaps imagining what it would be like to have someone like that in her life. It must be too good to have someone like that by your side. It's the best thing in the world, and you're going to have it too, Elena. A good girl like you, caring, hard-working, won't be alone forever. She smiled, but it was a sad smile, loaded with doubts that bastard had planted in her head. I don't know if I know how to love right, John. Rodrigo always said that I wasn't good for anything, that no good man would want me, that I was defective, weird, that there was something wrong with me. Sometimes I believe him, you know. I felt the anger return, hot and strong. Anger at that coward who had used his position of power to destroy the self-esteem of an innocent girl. Elena, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. You are a smart, caring, hard-working, beautiful girl. Any good man would be proud to have you by his side. Don't let the words of that coward define who you are. He said those things to keep you insecure, so you wouldn't have the courage to get away from him. Her eyes became moist, but not with sadness. It was emotion from hearing something she had never heard before. Thank you for saying that, John, even if it's just to cheer me up. I'm not saying it to cheer you up. I'm saying it because it's the purest truth. You'll see with time how capable you are of many good things. It was on that night, after such a sincere conversation, that things started to get complicated in a way that I didn't expect. I was almost falling asleep when I heard the sound of a motor outside, car engine, not a truck. It was strange because no one passed by there at that time of night. My farm was at the end of a dead-end road, and whoever had business with me always came during the day. I got out of bed slowly, went to the window and peeked behind the fabric curtain that Sarah had sewn. It was an old car, a white Ford Taurus, kind of dented, with a rust stain on the door. It stopped in front of the farm gate, but didn't turn off the headlights. Two people got out. Men. One of them lit a cigarette, and the light from the lighter illuminated his face for a second. It was a bearded guy, with a face that didn't inspire trust. One of those that you see and already know is not good company. I felt my chest tighten. Who were they? What did they want at that hour? And why had they come specifically to my property? I went to the front door, grabbed the old shotgun that was behind the closet, inheritance from my father that I had never used for anything other than scaring off bobcats. I didn't like guns, but in a remote place like that, sometimes it was necessary to have protection. The men stayed there for 5 long minutes, talking softly, pointing at the house, looking around as if they were studying the terrain. They didn't actually enter the gate, but they didn't leave either. It was as if they were doing reconnaissance, planning something. After a while that seemed eternal, they got in the car and left. But before leaving, one of them threw the cigarette on the road and spat to the side. Gestures of contempt that left me even more worried and with a bad feeling in my stomach. I went back to the room, but I couldn't sleep anymore. I lay there, tossing and turning, thinking, would it be a coincidence? Were they thieves studying the farm to come back later? Or would it be... No, it couldn't be. How would they find out that Elena was here? She had run away without telling anyone, without leaving a trace. But even so, the worry gnawed inside like a worm. In the morning, I didn't tell Elena anything about the nighttime visit. I didn't want to scare her without being sure of what had happened. But I kept an eye out during the whole day. Any different noise, bird flying away, startled, Bessie mooing out of time, dog barking in the distance, made me stop what I was doing and pay attention. Elena realized that I was acting strange. She was smart. She had developed a sharp instinct to perceive when something wasn't right, a skill that had probably saved her life more than once. Did something happen, John? You're kind of tense today, different from the other days. No, nothing happened. I'm just tired. But she didn't believe it. Elena had learned to read between the lines, to perceive lies even when well told. In the late afternoon, we were on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and red when she touched on the subject again. John, if you're worried about me, if you think my presence here can cause problems, you can tell me the truth. I can leave, look for another place. No, I said louder and firmer than I intended. You're not going anywhere. Your place is here now. The firmness of my voice surprised both of us. Even I didn't know that I felt that strongly. It's just, I don't want to cause you trouble, John. You've already done so much for me. You're not causing any trouble. On the contrary, you brought life to this house, gave me a reason to wake up every day wanting to live. I'm not going to let anyone take that away from me. It was raw truth. Elena had given me back purpose, the joy of taking care of someone, the feeling that my life had meaning. I wasn't going to give that up easily. That night, before sleeping, I did something that I hadn't done in a long time. I knelt beside the bed and prayed. I asked for protection for Elena. I asked for wisdom to make the right decisions. I asked for strength to protect who had become important to me without me realizing when. But not all prayers are answered the way we want. Sometimes God tests us before giving the answer. It was about 2 a.m. when the noise returned. Only this time it wasn't just one car, it was 2. And they didn't stop on the road like the other time. They entered straight into the farm grounds with headlights on and engines roaring loudly. I jumped up, my heart racing, grabbed the shotgun and went to the window. By the light of the headlights, I saw 4 men getting out of the cars. One of them, the tallest with a beer belly and the air of someone in charge, was clearly the leader. He gestured, gave orders to the others, pointed at the house. And then I heard his voice, loud enough to cut through the night. "She's in there, I'm absolutely sure." The description matches exactly what the truck driver said. My blood ran cold in my veins. They had come after Elena. The fear that I had felt for 2 days was confirmed in the worst possible way. I ran to her room and knocked on the door urgently. Elena, wake up quick." She opened the door immediately, already awake and scared. She must have heard the cars, too. She must have felt the danger in the air. "What's happening, John?" "There are people out here, armed men. I think they came to get you." Her face turned white as paper. The fear returned in her eyes with full force, that visceral fear that I thought had gone away forever. "It's Rodrigo," she said, her voice trembling. "He found me." "How did he manage to find me?" From the outside, someone knocked on the front door. 3 strong, aggressive knocks that echoed through the house like gunshots. "Open the door! We know she's in there!" Elena clung to my arm tightly, her nails digging into my skin. "John, I can't go back there. He's going to kill me. Or worse than that." I looked into her eyes, into the eyes of that girl who had arrived almost dead in my life and who was now more important to me than my own safety. I felt a determination growing in my chest, an absolute certainty. "You're not going back. Not even if I have to die here defending you." The knocks on the door became stronger, more desperate. "Last chance, open this door or we'll break it down." Eleanor trembled like a leaf in the wind. "What do we do, John?" I loaded the shotgun, took a deep breath, felt the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. "We fight, Elena. We fight with all our strength." The silence after the knocks on the door was more frightening than the noise. Elena was trembling so much that I felt the vibrations through her arm, clinging to mine as if her life depended on that contact. Outside, the men were talking in low voices, planning something that certainly wouldn't be good for either of us. "Elena, listen carefully," I whispered in her ear, trying to convey a calm that I didn't feel. "There's a back door in the kitchen that leads to the backyard. Go out through there without making noise. Go to the chicken coop. and hide behind it. No matter what you hear in here, don't leave there until I come to get you. And you, John, what are you going to do? I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to talk to them, see what they really want. John, no, they are 4 men, and you are alone. That's crazy. I'm not alone. I have Bertha here, I said, showing the old shotgun that had earned that affectionate nickname from my father decades ago. Elena shook her head in despair. I can't let you risk yourself for my sake. I can't carry that guilt too. It's not for your sake, Elena. It's because it's the right thing to do. It's because you don't deserve to go back to that hell. It's because I'm not going to let any coward hurt someone I've learned to care for. I held her face in my hands. It was cold with fear, but her eyes showed a determination that hadn't been there before. Elena, trust me. Go hide now, please. She hesitated for a second that seemed eternal, then nodded. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, a kiss of despair, of gratitude, of fear mixed with love, and ran on tiptoe towards the back of the house. The knocks returned, stronger, more impatient. Last chance, old man. We know the girl is there. Don't complicate things. I took a deep breath, loaded Bertha with hands that trembled only a little, and went to the front door. Who are you? What do you want on my property at this time of night? We're Elena's family friends. We came to take her back home, where she belongs. The voice was rough, threatening, with an accent that I didn't recognize. They were definitely not friends of anyone. They were predators after prey. There's no Elena here. You've mistaken the place. Get off my land before I call the police. A dry, cruel laugh echoed from the other side of the door. Police? Here in the middle of nowhere, at this time of night. Stop this nonsense, old man. We know she's in there. Open this door and hand over the girl. I'm not opening anything, and I'm not handing over anyone. You have 10 seconds to get out of here before I start shooting for real. Tense silence. Then, footsteps moving away from the door. For one idiotic moment, I thought they had given up, that they were going to leave us in peace. How naive of me. The first shot came through the living room window. The glass exploded into 1,000 pieces that flew across the room like a crystal rain. I threw myself on the floor instinctively, feeling some shards cut my arm. They weren't shots to kill yet. They were shots to intimidate, to show that they were also well-armed and willing to use violence. So, old man, still want to play hero? Or are you going to hand over the girl willingly? I crawled to the window, pulled back the bolt on Bertha, and aimed in the direction of the voice that had spoken. Get out of here now! I'm not going to warn you again! Another shot, this time hitting the wall very close to my head. The plaster flew into pieces, leaving a hole the size of an orange. Brick dust fell on my hair. That's when I realized that they weren't kidding at all. They really wanted Elena, and they weren't going to give up until they got what they came for. It was a matter of life and death, mine and hers. I fired once into the air, just to show that I was also armed and willing to use it. The noise echoed through the early morning, scaring the birds that were sleeping in the trees and making Bessie moo frightened in the pen. The old man has a gun! Someone shouted with a younger voice. So what? It's an old shotgun against 4 revolvers. He doesn't stand a chance. I heard footsteps running around the house. They were trying to surround me, corner me like an animal. I left the living room, went to the kitchen. From there I could see the backyard where Elena was hiding. I didn't see any suspicious movement yet, but I knew it was a matter of time. It was when I looked out the front window that my heart almost stopped beating. They were setting fire to the field. I saw the small flames spreading among the stalks of corn dried up by the drought. The fire licked the dry leaves, grew quickly, spread like a plague. In a few minutes, everything I had planted with so much love would turn to ash and smoke. The anger rose through my throat like bitter bile. It wasn't enough to threaten Eleanor. Now they were destroying my livelihood, my work, my whole life. I opened the front door in a burst of pure anger. You sons of bitches, what right do you have to burn my field? It was a mistake that almost cost me my life. The first shot passed, grazing my left ear. I felt the heat of the bullet, the cutting whistle in the air. The second hit the door frame, right where my head had been a second before, scattering splinters of wood. I went back inside quickly, but I had already seen what I needed to see. 4 men indeed, 3 younger ones, a skinny one, a chubby one of average height, and an older one who must have been Rodrigo. Bearded, tall, with the belly of someone who drank too much and the face of someone who had no scruples in life. The flames of the field grew, fueled by the dry wind of the early morning. The smell of smoke was already starting to enter the house, burning in the eyes and throat. Outside, I heard one of the voices shouting with sadistic pleasure, "Come out, you stubborn old man! Bring us the girl and we'll stop this!" "Never!" I shouted back. "You can burn everything, but she's not going back with you. Then you'll see your whole farm turn to ash, and then we're going to come in there anyway." And that's exactly what started to happen. The fire spread from the field to the dry pasture, to the bushes, to the smaller trees. In a few minutes it would reach the house, and if it reached the chicken coop where Elena was hiding, I couldn't let that happen. I wasn't going to let that girl burn to death because of me. I grabbed Bertha, filled my pants pockets with all the cartridges I had, and went out the back door. I was going to go around the house, try to catch them by surprise, end that thing once and for all. But they had thought of that too. They were smarter than I imagined. When I came out, 2 of them were already waiting for me. 1 on each side of the house, strategically positioned. "Drop the gun, you dumb old man." I looked to the right. I looked to the left. 2 firearms pointed at me a few feet away. Bertha only had 1 shot at a time. Even if I hit one, the other would kill me before I could reload. But I couldn't give up. I couldn't hand over Elena. I preferred to die right there than betray her trust. That's when something happened that I didn't expect at all. Elena came out from behind the chicken coop. "Stop!" she shouted with a force in her voice that I had never heard before. "Stop with this madness!" "Elena, no!" I shouted at her. "Go back there, hide!" But she kept walking towards us with firm steps, her hair disheveled, Sarah's dress dirty with dirt, her eyes red with crying and fear, but with a determination that impressed me. "Rodrigo!" she shouted even louder. "I know it's you. Stop with all this violence." The 2 men who were pointing their guns at me looked at her, confused, losing focus for a few seconds. It was the chance I needed. I shot the one who was closest to me. The bullet hit him in the right leg. He fell screaming in pain. The gun flew away. The other turned to shoot at me, but Elena threw herself between us without thinking about the consequences. "No, don't hurt him!" "Elena, get out of there!" the man shouted, without the courage to shoot with her in front. That's when Rodrigo appeared running from the front of the house, tall indeed, bearded, with the face of a complete bastard. But what impressed me the most were his eyes when he saw Elena. It wasn't just anger or possessiveness. It was a sick obsession, as if she were an object of his property. "My girl," he said with a voice that tried to be loving but only managed to be disgusting. "I finally found you. Daddy was worried." Elena trembled but didn't leave my front. "Rodrigo, leave John alone. If you want to talk to me, let's talk. But stop with this unnecessary violence." "Violence?" He laughed bitterly. Who started with violence was this old man playing hero. "All I wanted was to pick up my girl and take her back home to her place. I'm not your girl, and that was never my home." His face changed completely. The mask of false kindness fell like a dry leaf, revealing the true face of the predator. "You are mine, yes. Your mother left me responsible for you when she died, and you're going back with me whether you want to or not." "She's not going anywhere with you," I said, still pointing Bertha at him, even knowing that I had few cartridges left. Rodrigo looked at me with total contempt. "And who are you to meddle in my family, you useless old man? I'm who takes care of her now. I'm who protects her from people like you." "Takes care of?" He laughed again, a bitter and cruel laugh. "What do you take care of, old man? You can't even take care of your own farm. Look there." He pointed at the fire that continued to spread. everything burning because of your idiotic stubbornness. The flames had already reached dangerously close to the house. The heat reached us in waves. If we didn't do something soon, we were all going to burn to death. Elena, Rodrigo continued, changing the tone again to that manipulative, false sweetness. You see what happens when you run away? Other people get hurt because of you. That man in the field got hurt because of you. Now, this old man is going to lose everything because of you. Come back with me, and all this stops right now. I saw Elena waver. That bastard knew exactly where to squeeze to hurt, knew her weaknesses better than anyone. Elena, don't listen to him, I said urgently. He's lying, manipulating you. None of this is your fault. Lying? Rodrigo shouted. Look around, girl. Look at the damage, all because you don't accept your place in life. Elena started to cry, divided between guilt and fear. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me. I can't be responsible for this. Then come with me now. Immediately, she took a step in his direction. My heart almost stopped. Elena, no. But she stopped in the middle of the way. She looked at me, then at him, then at the fire that consumed everything around, and I saw something change in her eyes, a decision being made. No, Rodrigo, I'm not going anymore. What did you say? I said no. I'm not going with you. Never again in my life. His face turned red with pure anger. You have no choice, you rebellious girl. I do, yes. And my choice is to stay here with who treats me with respect and dignity. Rodrigo pulled a gun from his waist, a small but deadly pistol up close. Then no one will have you. If you can't be mine, you won't be anyone else's. And he pointed the gun directly at Elena. That's when everything happened very fast, as if time had accelerated. I threw myself in front of her. She shouted my name. Rodrigo shot. The bullet hit me in the left shoulder. The pain was immediate and brutal, like burning iron piercing flesh and bone. I fell to my knees on the ground. Bertha escaped from my hand. Hot blood wet my shirt. Eleanor bent down beside me, desperate. John, are you okay? Talk to me. I'm alive, I managed to say between clenched teeth. Just a flesh wound. Everything will be all right. Rodrigo laughed with sadistic pleasure. Now the fun is over for good. Let's go, Elena. Enough trouble. But when he bent down to grab her by the arm, Elena did something that none of us expected. She picked up Bertha from the ground with both hands and pointed it directly at Rodrigo's chest. Elena, Rodrigo said, kind of embarrassed for the first time. You don't even know how to use that old thing. I don't need to know how to use it, right? She replied, her voice trembling but firm as rock. This close, even a child hits the target. The man I had shot in the leg tried to get up, groaning in pain. Elena turned the gun to him without hesitating. Stay there on the ground quietly. Then she looked back at Rodrigo with a determination that filled me with pride. You're going to leave here now, and you're never coming back. Elena, you don't understand. Now! Her shout echoed through the early morning, like the roar of a lioness defending her cub. It was a shout of years of stored fear, of swallowed humiliation, of accumulated anger. It was the shout of a woman who had finally found her strength and her voice. Rodrigo hesitated, clearly not knowing how to react. He looked at the gun in her hand, looked at his companions, one injured on the ground, the other two retreating in fear, looked at the fire that was already beginning to diminish for lack of dry fuel. This isn't over, Elena. You're still going to regret it. It's over, yes, Elena replied without lowering the gun. If you come back here, I'll call the police from Willow Creek, and I'll tell everything. Everything you did to me during those years, everything you tried to do. Do you really want to risk going to jail? For a moment that seemed like an eternity, they stared at each other, predator and prey, in a complete inversion of roles. Only now the former prey had sharp claws and a willingness to use them. Rodrigo spat on the ground with disgust. Let's go, he said to the others, defeated. This one isn't worth the trouble anymore. They helped the injured man into the car, cursing under their breath. Before getting in the car, Rodrigo looked at Elena one last time with pure hatred. "You're going to regret this, girl. You're going to be alone in the world again." "I've already regretted a lot of things in life," Elena replied, still holding the shotgun, "but I'll never regret facing you." The cars left kicking up red dust on the road, with engines roaring loudly. Elena kept holding Bertha until they disappeared completely on the horizon. Only then did she drop the gun and came to take care of me. "John, how's the shoulder? Is it bleeding much?" "Hurting like hell, but I'll live." The bullet went through, didn't stay inside. She tore a piece from the hem of her dress and made an improvised bandage, with hands that trembled, not with fear, but with pure adrenaline. "Elena." "Yes? You were the bravest woman I've ever seen in my life." She smiled through the tears that ran down her dirty face. "I learned from the best teacher." We looked at the burned field, at the house half destroyed by the shots, at the damage that a single night of violence had caused. It seemed like the end of the world. "John, I'm so sorry. Because of me, you lost." "I didn't lose anything important for real," I interrupted, holding her hand with my good hand. "Field grows again. House gets fixed, but what has no price in the world is having someone who's worth protecting." She looked me in the eyes with an intensity that touched me deeply. "And now? What do we do now?" "Now we start over. Together. From scratch, if necessary." In the horizon, the first lights of dawn began to appear behind the hills, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. And with them, the promise of a new day. A day without fear. A day of true freedom. 6 months after the night of the fire, I woke up with the smell of rain in the air. Not that false smell of promise that we feel when we're desperate for water and imagine things. It was the smell of real rain, dense, heavy, loaded with life, ready to fall and transform everything. I got out of bed slowly, still feeling a slight pain in my left shoulder. Rodrigo's bullet had passed through clean, but left a mark that would probably accompany me for the rest of my life. It didn't bother me. It was like a medal of courage, proof that it had been worth fighting for what was right. I went to the window and looked outside. The sky was heavy with dark grey clouds, those fat, low clouds that promise a generous storm. And down there, in the place where the burned field used to be, hundreds of small green sprouts dotted the black and fertile earth. Elena had replanted everything with her own hands: corn, beans, pumpkin, okra, cassava. She worked sun to sun for weeks, preparing the soil with organic fertilizer, planting seed by seed with the care of a mother taking care of a child, watering with water from the well when the sky was still clear. She said it was her way of healing the wound that night had left on the earth. I always replied that there was no wound to heal, but she insisted that it was important to do that. "Good morning, my love," said her voice behind me. I turned, feeling my heart race, as it always did when she called me that. Elena was in the doorway of the room, already dressed in a floral dress that she had bought in town, her long hair loose on her shoulders, one hand resting on her belly that was already beginning to round, 3 months pregnant. 3 months since we discovered that we were going to be parents. The happiest news that I had ever received in my life, at 53 years of age. "Good morning, darling. It's going to rain today." "I know, I smelled it since early. The corn stalks will be happy as can be." She came closer to the window and stood beside me, resting her head on my good shoulder. Together, we looked at the new field that she had created with so much love. "You did a beautiful job there, Elena." "We did," she corrected as she always did. "You're the one who taught me where to plant each thing, what time of year was best, how to prepare the soil to receive the seeds." I just put my hands in the dirt. It was true. After I recovered from the shoulder injury, we spent many afternoons together in the field. I taught her the secrets that my father had passed on to me. She learned with the speed of someone who has a natural vocation. asked intelligent questions, suggested improvements that were sometimes better than my old methods. It was so good to have someone interested in what I knew, someone to pass on the knowledge of a lifetime. John, can I tell you something? You always can, you know that. Yesterday, when I went to get eggs in the chicken coop, I thought of something that moved me. It's been 8 months since I arrived here. It's the place where I've lived the longest since my mother died, and now I'm going to have a child here. That touched me deeply. 8 months seemed like a short time, but for someone who had never had a real home, who had lived as a prisoner in her own house, it must have seemed like an eternity of peace. And how do you feel about that? For the first time in my life, I feel completely at home, completely safe, completely loved. The first thunder rumbled in the distance, still weak, but promising strength. Eleanor smiled and placed my hand on her small belly. Our son will be born in the time of rain. It's a good sign. It's the best possible sign, I agreed, feeling an immense emotion rise through my chest. Better have some coffee before the rain starts for real. In the kitchen, she had already prepared everything with her usual care. Warm and fragrant coffee, homemade bread that she had learned to make better than any bakery, pecan jelly that we made together the previous week, fresh cheese that Bessie produced in abundance since she had gained a companion. The table was set with care, with an embroidered tablecloth that Elena had made during the rainy afternoons of the past month. We sat down to eat in the comfortable silence of those who understand each other without needing many words. Through the kitchen window, you could see the garden that she cared for like a garden. The tomato plants were loaded with red fruits. The green and shiny collard greens swayed in the wind. The parsley grew in perfectly organized beds. It was as if Elena had the gift of bringing life to everything she touched. John, I need to tell you something important. Her tone caught my attention. I stopped chewing and paid total attention. You can talk, love. I received a letter yesterday from the courthouse in Tulsa. I felt my chest tighten by instinct. Anything related to that city made me worried, even knowing that Rodrigo would never dare to show up here again. What kind of letter? About my mother's inheritance. It seems she had a small house that I didn't know existed. The lawyer wants to talk to me about the property papers. I swallowed hard. Inheritance meant assets. Meant that Elena now had options in life. It meant that she no longer needed to stay there out of necessity, that she could freely choose where she wanted to live. And what do you intend to do? Elena stirred her coffee with the spoon, thoughtfully, choosing the right words. I want to go there and solve this, sign the necessary papers, but not to stay, not to live. I want to sell the house and use the money to invest here in our farm. Our farm? Our farm, yes, if you agree, of course. I thought that we could expand the garden, buy some more laying hens, maybe even 2 milk cows to keep Bessie and Hope company, and remodel the house to receive our son. The relief I felt was so great that I almost felt ashamed of my insecurity. I was still afraid of losing Eleanor, afraid that she would decide that she deserved something better than a widowed farmer in the countryside of Oklahoma. Elena, you know that this farm is already yours too, right? You don't need to invest money to have the right to stay here. I know that, she smiled, taking my hand over the table. But I want to do this. I want it to be official, that our son grows up knowing that this land belongs to both of his parents. I want to be your partner for real in everything. Partner, companion, wife, mother of my son, the most beautiful words in the world, all gathered in one person. The second thunder was stronger, closer. The first drops began to drip on the tile roof. It's starting, said Elena, looking out the window with joy. Yes, and it's going to be a blessed rain. We finished coffee listening to the rain gain strength little by little. First they were sparse drops, then a fine drizzle, until it turned into a generous and constant rain, one of those that fill the reservoirs and make the earth sigh with relief after months of waiting. Elena got up from the table and went to the kitchen door. She opened it and stood there, breathing deeply, feeling the good smell of the rain wetting the dry earth, seeing the water form small rivers and puddles in the backyard. "John, come see this here." I went to her and stood by her side on the doorstep. The rain was falling hard now, making a pleasant noise on the roof, soaking the new field that seemed to grow in front of us. And in the middle of the water and wet earth, some frogs began to sing. "How long has it been since you heard frogs sing here?" I thought about her question. It had been over 2 years, since before Sarah got sick, when it still rained regularly and life seemed simpler. A long time. Too long. That's right. They came back, just like life came back to this house, to this land, to you. We stood there for long minutes, standing in the door, watching the rain wash the world and bring new life to everything. Elena leaned her shoulder on mine, a simple gesture that meant so much. Trust, affection, companionship, true love. "Eleanor, can I ask you a question?" "You can ask whatever questions you want." "Are you happy here for real?" She took a while to answer, not because she had doubts, but because she wanted to find the exact words to express what she felt. "You know, John, I spent so many years just trying to survive that I never stopped to think if I was happy or not. Happiness seemed like a luxury that wasn't for me. But here, with you, expecting our son, I discovered what that is for real. Waking up without fear, sleeping in complete peace, having someone who loves me the way I am, having a place to call my own forever. Yes, I'm very happy, the happiest I've ever been in my life." I felt an immense emotion rise through my throat, almost making me cry with gratitude. "Me too, Elena. I'm also the happiest I've ever been." The rain continued to fall for hours, a gentle and constant rain that the earth drank with thirst. We took the opportunity to arrange things inside the house, plan the renovations for the baby's room, organize the farm papers, dream about the future we had ahead of us. In the middle of the afternoon, when the rain gave a truce, Eleanor had an idea. "Let's go outside and see how the field is doing." We put on rubber boots and left holding hands. The earth was soaked and fragrant, the air clean as crystal. The small sprouts seemed to have grown just with that first generous rain of the year. It was impressive how nature responded quickly when it received exactly what it needed. "Look there," Eleanor pointed to a special corner of the garden. "The sunflowers that I planted last month are already sprouting." There were dozens of small green dots coming out of the wet earth. In a few months, they would turn into huge flowers, yellow as the sun, always facing the light. "Why did you insist on planting sunflowers?" "Because they remind me of hope and perseverance. No matter what happens, rain, wind, drought, they always look for the light. They always turn their face to the sun, like I learned to do after I met you." We walked among the beds, checking each plant carefully. Elena knew them all, knew exactly where she had planted each seed, remembered when she had watered for the last time. It was beautiful to see how she had connected deeply with that land. "John, can I tell you something else?" "You always can." "When I was a child, before my father died, he always said that every person has a place in the world where they truly belong. A place where the roots grow deep and strong, where the soul finds peace." I never quite understood what he meant by that, until now. She stopped walking and looked around, at the whitewashed house, at the verdant field, at the hills on the horizon that protected our small valley. "This is my place, John. Here, my roots grew deeper than I ever imagined possible." I felt that the time had come to say something that I had been holding back for weeks, a question that burned inside me. "Elena, have you thought about making this even more official?" "What do you mean?" "We already live together. We're already going to have a child." My heart raced. It wasn't exactly how I had planned to speak, but the words came out on their own. "Marry me, for real, in the church, with a priest, with a signed paper." She stopped walking completely. She looked at me with genuine surprise, then with a smile that started small and grew until it lit up her entire rain-wet face. "John, I know it may seem silly that we're already together anyway, but I want our son to be born with officially married parents. I want you to have my name. Yes, 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 I want to marry you. Of course I want to." "Ndi." The rain returned at that exact moment, stronger than before, as if the sky had waited for our decision to release all the water it had saved. But neither of us moved to protect ourselves. We stood there, in the middle of the field, letting the water wet our faces, our clothes, our immense joy. Elena came closer and hugged me tightly, with affection, with true love. It was a hug different from all the others. It was a hug of someone who had found their definitive place in the world. "I love you, John. I love you. I love our life. I love our son who's growing in here. I love you too, Eleanor, more than anything in this world." They were words that we said every day, but at that moment, under the rain, with the smell of wet earth in the air and the future shining in front of us, they had a special flavor. Flavor of promise fulfilled, of dream realized, of happiness conquered with much sweat and tears. We went back home holding hands, soaked and radiant with happiness. On the porch, we stopped to take off our wet boots and laugh at our faces of happy, drowned people. Elena looked at me with that new smile of hers, full of confidence and love. Do you know what Sarah would say if she had seen this scene? The question caught me by surprise. Elena rarely spoke of Sarah on her own initiative, always respectful of my longing. What would she say? That the rain brought more than water to this land. It brought hope, it brought love, it brought future. She was absolutely right. Sarah always said that after the most destructive storm came the most beautiful growth. And there was the living proof. A new field, a true love, a new life literally sprouting from the earth that seemed dead. That night, after a special dinner to celebrate the engagement, we sat on the porch to listen to the rain that continued to fall gently. Elena had returned to crochet, making a yellow blanket for the baby. I read a farmer's almanac, planning everything we were going to plant in the next season, dreaming about the family we were going to form. "John? Thank you. For what now? For saving me when I needed it most, for teaching me that I was worth saving, for giving me a real home, for loving me exactly the way I am, for giving me the chance to be a mother, for everything." I closed the almanac and looked at her with all the love that fit in my chest. "Elena, who saved me was you. When I found you on that road, I was lost too. I was breathing, but I wasn't really living. You brought life back to this house, to this land, to me, gave me reason to wake up every day with joy." The rain continued to fall throughout the early morning. And at some point of the night, lying in our bed, listening to the pleasant noise of the water on the roof and feeling Eleanor breathe peacefully beside me, with her hand resting on the belly that guarded our son, I had an absolute certainty. Sometimes life breaks us completely, destroys everything we thought we were, that we had, that we wanted to be. Sarah dying, me staying alone, Elena suffering in the hands of that bastard. Everything seemed like the end of the world. But sometimes, in the middle of the most complete wreckage, two people meet at the exact moment and discover that together they can rebuild something much more beautiful than they had before. Stronger, truer, more full of love. The wedding was 3 months later, when Eleanor was already 6 months pregnant and with a round belly that she caressed all the time. It was a simple ceremony in the small church of Willow Creek, with the people of the region present. Elena wore a simple white dress that we bought in Tulsa. I wore the suit that I had kept since the wedding with Sarah, but that now carried new hopes. Mrs. Evans from the pharmacy cried throughout the ceremony. Mr. Johnson from the market made a point of providing everything for the small lunch after Mass. The news of our wedding spread throughout the entire region, the widowed farmer and the girl he had saved, now expecting a child together. Some people talked, of course. There's always someone who talks. They said it was too fast, that there was too much age difference, that it could go wrong. But for every person who spoke badly, there were 10 who rooted for us. Because everyone likes a story of true love that overcomes all difficulties. When the priest asked if I accepted Elena as my lawful wife, in joy and in sorrow, in health and in sickness, in riches and in poverty, until death do us part, I looked into her eyes, into those eyes that had arrived full of fear and now shone with happiness, and answered with all the certainty in the universe, I do with all my heart. And when it was her turn, Elena held my hand firmly and said, with a clear voice that echoed throughout the entire church, I do. And I promise to make this house and this family happy for the rest of my life. Our son was born in December, along with the first heavy rains of summer. A beautiful, healthy boy who came into the world screaming loudly as if he wanted to announce to everyone that he had arrived to stay. Elena had a peaceful birth, at home even, with the most experienced midwife in the region. When I held my son in my arms for the first time, I felt such a great emotion that I thought I was going to faint. He was small, red, perfect. He had his mother's eyes and a shock of black hair that promised to be just like hers. What are we going to name him? Elena asked, still tired but radiant. I had known the answer for months. Francis, in honor of my father, but we'll call him Frankie. Francis John Doe, she completed, smiling, a beautiful name for a boy who was born of true love. Today, 2 years after that rescue on the road, I'm here on the porch on a Sunday afternoon, watching Elena play in the garden with Frankie. He's a year and 4 months old, already walks on his own, already says a few words, and is the happiest child I've ever seen in my life. Elena is pregnant again. 4 months with a girl that we're going to name Sarah, in honor of the woman who prepared my heart to love again. The sunflowers that Elena planted 2 years ago are huge now, a golden field that attracts visitors from all over the region. The cornfield grew strong and abundant. Bessie, Hope, and the 2 new cows that we bought produce enough milk for our family, and there's still enough left to sell in town. Elena's garden has become a legend in the region. Everyone wants to know her secret to making the plants grow so beautifully. The house has been renovated and expanded. There's a room for Frankie, a room that's being prepared for Sarah, a larger living room to receive the visits that now appear frequently. Elena insisted on keeping the room where she slept in the early days. She says it's a sacred place where she was reborn to life. Sometimes at night, when Elena is breastfeeding Frankie and I feel little Sarah move in her belly, I think about how mysterious life is, about how the worst moments can be the preparation for the best, about how losing everything can be the first step to gaining what really matters. Sarah always said that God closes a door but opens a window. It took me a while to understand what she meant. Now, I understand perfectly. When Sarah died, a door closed. The door of what I was, of what I had, of the life I knew. I thought I would never be happy again, that the rest of my life would be just longing and loneliness. But when I found Elena on that road, a window opened. A giant window to a new life, to a different but equally true love, to a happiness that I didn't even know was possible to feel in my 50s. Elena gets up from the garden and waves to me, with Frankie in her arms and dirt on her hands. There's sweat on her forehead, a smile on her face, and that glow in her eyes that only pregnant and happy women have. I wave back and feel my heart squeeze with so much gratitude. Sometimes, when we least expect it, life puts someone in our path, someone who needs to be saved. And in the generous act of saving that person, we discover that we were also desperately needing to be saved. Elena approaches the porch. Frankie stretches his arms out to me, shouting, "Daddy!" and I receive them in my arms with all the love in the world. "What are you thinking about, love?" Elena asks, noticing my pensive air. I was thinking that the rain brought hope that night 2 years ago, but it was love that made it grow, flourish, and bear fruit. Eleanor smiles and kisses my forehead, and it will still bear many fruits. Our family is just beginning. I look at this extraordinary woman who arrived almost dead in my life and transformed it completely. I look at my son who plays in my arms. I feel my daughter move in her mother's belly. I look at this land that has returned to being fertile and generous. And I know, deep in my soul, that this story began in the middle of dirt and despair, but ended like a field of sunflowers, always facing the sun, always seeking the light, always believing that after the darkest night, always comes the most beautiful dawn. There are encounters that change destinies forever, not for the great gestures we make, but for the simple courage to extend a hand when someone needs it most, and discover that, by saving another wounded heart, we also save our own. True love is not just giving, it's allowing ourselves to be saved too.